today, which was not expected, but we'll manage anyway. And we have a very nice scene today with 3 different speeches in the beginning and 2 different panels. And this is all in 1 hour. So we're going to be quick and fast. And I would love to say there's a lot of space for interaction, but unfortunately there's not. So please stick around afterwards, or feel free, of course, to reach out later on. This is my first practical invitation to leave your business card if you want to stay updated on this topic, on the topic of active mobility, on the program of Active, or just want to be in touch. Feel free to hand out your business card to me or one of my colleagues here in the room as well, here on the side. Because it's a full program we have today, just to start with, I think we all agree that there's a lack of active mobility worldwide, and we all know it. We're not going to solve this problem within this hour today, unfortunately, but what we can do is try to make sure we're on the same page, because there's happening quite a lot worldwide. The topic of active mobility is one that we're all believing in, and we're trying to get it on the agenda with all the different organizations we work for. And I dare to say here at this stage, I was expecting a stage, in this room today we have a key decision makers with us today. We are able to make a difference. And many thanks to especially the World Bank and WRI for organizing this conference and addressing the topic of walking and cycling. So thank you so much for that. We're going to start right away with the 2 opening keynotes. First of all, our excellent speaker, Mr. Kees van den Burg, Vice Minister of Infrastructure and Water Management at the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure from the Netherlands. Feel free to stand up, but also feel free to stay seated, whatever you prefer as a speaker or a panelist. So give him a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, friends. I would like to start by thanking World Bank and World University for organizing this high-level conference. It's
Slightly closer.
Conference giving us an opportunity to discuss important issues. And despite we are sitting down, I think it will be an active session. We share, ladies and gentlemen, a common vision to unlock the full potential of active mobility on a global scale. More and more countries and organizations are seeing the benefits of both cycling and walking and are willing to integrate active mobility in national and local mobility policy. And we believe that it's a key solution improving accessibility, health, climate, and livability within and between cities. Last December, at the COP28 in Dubai, the Active program was launched. The program has been set up to create a front-runner group of countries and organizations to collectively promote active mobility on an international stage by working together to stimulate capacity building worldwide and creating access to investments and active mobility through the Active Mobility Fund. The objectives of Active are to support the training of 10,000 active mobility experts within 10 years and to successfully launch a dedicated active mobility fund at Velocity in June in Ghent to increase international investments in this area. Until now, the costs associated with workshops have been covered by the Netherlands, and the expenditure to expedite the program and ensure a sustained impact on those cities who need it now and continue to need it, additional funding from other countries should secure the continuity of the program. And we are happy with the agreements between Belgium and Luxembourg to co-finance Active together. Hopefully, many other countries will follow from 2025 on. And yes, this is an open invitation. Investments in walking and cycling can drive the necessary change to meet the climate goals, as well as to contribute to healthy, livable, and equitable cities. But nonetheless, as you know, the total investment by international and national stakeholders do not reflect the growing demand and the need at the local level. And that's why we are working towards a dedicated fund for active mobility. The Active Mobility Fund for Cycling, Walking embodies a collaborative effort to empower nations, regions, and cities in fostering sustainable mobility solutions. Through strategic partnership and a focus on human capacity building, the fund aims to promote the implementation of cycling and walking policies and infrastructure in low and middle income countries, and thereby create lasting impact on active mobility initiatives worldwide. The Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg are currently working together with a wide range of important partners, amongst others, the WRI, the World Bank, UNEP, the World Health Organization, GIGIT, UNESCO, to scale up efforts in capacity building and international financing for walking and cycling. And we hope to bring together more partners and countries to promote the implementation of dedicated cycling policies and cycling infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, to finish, I would like to thank the speakers in today's session for sharing their knowledge and their valuable insights with us today. It captures the spirit of what Active is, an open, interactive program which we are building together with all of us. And feel free to share your thoughts and ideas with us during the panel today or otherwise after the session. Our Active team is here for this purpose. And this will not only make our program stronger after all. I'm very much looking forward for a fruitful discussion during the session and the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kees, for this nice warm welcome, I think. The room is filling up, so there are some chairs here up front. So feel free, if you want to sit down, to come up front, also here on the side. Please don't hesitate. It is an active session, though, so we're going to stand up in between, but maybe an hour is a bit too long. Thank you again, Kees. Let's continue with the next speaker, Ms. Nicolette Pelletier from World Bank. It's up to you if you stand up or sit down, whatever you prefer.
Well, thank you very much, Mirjam. And let me start by saying it's really a pleasure to be part of such a distinguished audience to talk about active mobility, which is a topic that has been there for a long time, has grown in momentum during COVID, where we saw the sales of bicycles going to the roof and their cost actually. But what we've learned, I mean, through the past years is that this is not something that is ancillary to the transport agenda. It can be really something very powerful and a great complement to the whole transport agenda and sustainable transport agenda. Now, at the World Bank, as you know, we are a development organization, so we finance transport programs all over the world. This is depending on the requests that we receive from countries from the global south. Urban transport is a big part of that work because the world is urbanizing. And each time we receive these requests, what we're trying to assess is how do we maximize the development benefit. You know, our mission is to end poverty on a livable planet. And so those words are important. Every single one of those words are important. And when we receive a request to develop, to finance transport programs, I mean, we try to assess a little bit what's how do we maximize the impact on the development benefits and on the sustainability. You know? And when we started to receive requests from active mobility programs, what we discovered is that this made perfect economic sense. No one that's through the various prioritization lenses that we apply to our development programs, whether it's economic benefits, financial sustainability, whether it's health benefits. The active mobility is actually the right thing to do. And we recently completed some research with our partner from ITDP, and I want to say hi to Heather, because we've worked hand in hand on this and research that we released at the last COP. We looked at 5 cities around the world that have been particularly championing this agenda. Those are Addis Ababa, Buenos Aires, Dar es Salaam, Tianjin, and Lima. And the results was overwhelming. The cost benefit that you observe in these kind of programs is among some of the best investments that you can find in the transport sector. 53% internal rate of return in Tianjin, 32% in Dar, $80 million annual savings in Bogota, 30 million in Guangzhou. So the evidence is there to show that this makes economic sense. Now, this makes economic sense because of mobility performance, because of complementarities with other transport modes, and there is also ample evidence that this active mobility is a way to increase the ridership of public transportation programs. And ample evidence that this is also a very cost-effective way to reduce GHG emissions. So it's obviously a zero emission mobility mode, but it's also a very cost-effective way to reduce emissions. Finally, when we look at those programs, they are not only cost-effective, clean, they are also inclusive, because I don't know, many of you were probably in the session this morning, the opening session for TT, where Claudia Lopez, the former mayor of Bogota, made this very powerful statement about women mobility needs, which are different than men, and predominantly we know that women and children walk and bike, use non-motorized mode of transport in the global south. And so when we invest in active mobility, there is also a way to promote a more inclusive mobility. So you kind of kill 3 birds with one stone. So that, I think, what I would like to say a little bit in introduction, and just to say that together with ITDP, we are working together on the next phase of this research, where we want to lower the transaction cost for all those teams that are working on active mobility programs, so that they don't start from scratch. They have some modeling instruments that are out there that can evaluate the benefit of active mobility programs, so that they can design and implement those programs faster. It's a very simple way to standardize the methodology and allow to go to scale, which is what we want.
Thank you so much. Excellent. I think some applause is there, right? Thank you so much, Ms. Peltier. I think indeed, I also saw the research compliments on that as well for you, Heather. And I think indeed it's really a must read for this whole room. So if you haven't read it, please do so. Thank you so much. I think we continue right away with the next speaker. May I invite from the WRI, Ms. Rogier van den Berg.
Thank you very much. I think a lot has been said about active mobility, but not enough, never enough, right? If you look at if the brick is the cornerstone of the house, public spaces and streets are that. This is where you kind of make cities from. The problem is that in the many cities that we work as WRI, you see that there's actually this untapped potential. It's unsafe and it's not accessible. While it offers a huge opportunity, as you said, to decarbonize, because it's already decarbonized, but it also helps to reduce, health issues, reduce air quality, air pollution, and urban congestion. I think in the last few years, this idea of the 15-minute city really became trending in terms of how do you create environments that are based on proximity and where everybody has access to urban services. And active mobility is a key to that. But it needs to be safe, and it needs to be accessible for everyone. We have a couple of very good examples of where we work with WRI, because we are a research organization, but the Ross Center for Cities has a lot of teams on the ground. So 75% of our people work with cities to figure out the difficult stuff. And you can't imagine, well, some people here, they work in cities in the global south, but opening up a stretch of bicycle lane in a city of Buenos Aires or a city of Bangalore is hell on earth. Hell on earth. You enter in a very aggressive and complex situation when you're doing that. And you just simply can't believe it, especially not me coming from the Netherlands. Last 15 years I've been working in the global south, but the amount of aggression that you see when you as an organization, together with partners, implement, active mobility infrastructure is simply stunning. So that needs to change, and therefore we need to have showcases. We don't need only have to implement kind of policies and show and argue why it's good, but really, and I think Claudia today also said it, right? Or I think yesterday in our discussion, the best way to learn is to do it, right? And to showcase. We've been involved in a few things, and I just mentioned a few examples in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, where we have been where we made 70 kilometers of bike lanes on major avenues. And that proves that the infrastructure that you make creates the demand. It automatically creates demand. So we counted that actually on 2 corridors in Buenos Aires, we saw increased bicycle usage by increasing by 130% one avenue, 146% on another avenue. But we also saw, for example, increased ridership by women, that increased 154%. So once more, when you make it and you showcase it and you open it, it's going to be used. I think another example where we've been involved in is in Turkey, where we actually led a campaign to make cycling much more kind of prominent as a commuting mode of transport. And it needs quite a bit of work because there's a stigma in active mobility, as we all know. Biking and walking is for the poor, once you make it, you don't do it. So you need to change it. So we developed a campaign where we really work with civil society and an active role of them also in helping to shape policies and contribute to that campaign. And another example that I want to mention is pop-up bike lanes in Bangalore. COVID, as we've seen in many cities, have kind of really started a movement of opening up overnight active mobility options, bicycling lanes and pedestrian lanes. In Bangalore, we've been instrumental in collaborating on a pop-up 70-kilometer lane that then actually paves the way for more permanent infrastructure, cycling infrastructure in Bangalore. So this combination of opening up, setting the example, looking what type of effect it has on the ridership, and the campaign in order to kind of get rid of that stigma on active mobility is some of the things that we're involved in and that I'm very eager to see more of.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree more with that. So I'm not anything going to add with that. The only thing is indeed that I've heard several times that actually the pandemic helped us. And that's also, in that sense, of course, a good thing with all these pop-up infrastructure. And we've seen worldwide more infrastructure, cycling infrastructure. Some has been removed, but overall, most infrastructure has stayed in so many cities. Thank you so much for your contribution. It's popped to my mind that we can make this session a little bit more interactive, because I see when I look around in the room, I see so many familiar faces, but also so much knowledge. So we do have some sticky notes. Maybe Thijs, if you want to help me to explore it. So if you have any ideas or any thoughts or even feelings, or just want to leave your email address, feel free to do so. So we're going to collect them. Thank you so much. feel free to rip them apart. Please note it down. And we want to take that into account, or if you just want to simply stay in touch, because this is, I hope this will be inspiring for all of you, but you also have so much knowledge to share. I could have made the list for this session endless with more than 20 persons, but then we are here the whole day. So feel free to leave your ideas and thoughts. Because then we go to the first panel. I'm looking a little bit to the left as well, because the panelists are here. And if there's a burning questions from the room, feel free. If there's anything else, feel free to interrupt. We don't have much time, I'm going to say. So in one sentence, please. But if you do have a burning question, feel free to raise your hands. We're going to make time for it. We also have an audience at home. I wanted to stress that as well. So this room is already quite packed, which is great to see. But also worldwide is being streamed. Even more people listening. So maybe that's good to know. Thank you again. It's all male panel this day, but in the panel we have some ladies here, luckily. But it's quite equal in this sense. I think for the panelists, maybe it's nice to introduce yourself briefly, if that's okay, in one or two sentences. May I start with you, Philip?
I'm Philip Boulaert, Secretary General of the Department of Mobility and Public Works in the Flemish region, which is a part of Belgium.
Thank you so much.
Hello, good afternoon. Daphne Gross-Jansen. I am representing the German Federal Ministry for Cooperation and Development, and I'm the focal point for mobility, sustainable mobility.
And I'm Heather Thompson. I'm the CEO of ITDP, the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy, and we are an international nonprofit organization headquartered in New York, but with offices all over the world, active at the city, state, national, and international levels with nearly 40 years of history. So happy to be with you all.
Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Siri Babu Mahajan. I'm the mayor of Lalit Metropolitan City, and Kathmandu Valley does have two metro cities. One is Kathmandu, the capital city of Nepal, and next is Lalitpur. So I'm very glad to be here with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So on this side as well, panelists, of course, I'm sorry, I have to look around in that sense. If it's okay, I start with you, Philip, with Flanders, Belgium. Close for us, but quite far away from where we are right now. Just out of curiosity, Flanders has also model split on cycling. Maybe briefly, how did you achieve that?
Well, first of all, I want to stress what Rogier said. It asks for change. And change is difficult because everybody wants change, nobody wants to change. And that's a big problem. You need some courage to take some measures. And when those measures are taken, you can grow. And what did we do? First of all, we invested in infrastructure. We come from a period 10 years ago where yearly we invested an amount of 100 million euros in bicycle paths. Today, this has augmented to 380 million a year. So that's 380 million euros a year for cycling infrastructure. And there's the adagium of when you build it, they will come, and we have seen them coming. But we had a kind of luck also. The pandemic, which you mentioned, was part of our luck. But also the electrical mobility. The electrical bikes made it possible to go further with the same amount of pain to do it. I know it's the wrong word, I'm sorry, but I was looking in my head, couldn't find it. And there's of course that financial commitment that was very important of our government to do it and to make us able to build it. Next to that, there's of course education and awareness. If you want people to change, you have to show them how to change. You have to show them what the benefits are, the inclusion, the healthy aspects, even the safety aspects. When you build new infrastructure, safety is rising. And this makes it possible to use this infrastructure. Next to that, of course, we also build and share knowledge. And we have now, since a few months, we even have a cycling professor at the Ghent University who is appointed to educate students in architecture, in planning on cycling and on aspects of cycling in their profession. And then, of course, integrated regional planning is needed, and an ambitious vision for 2040, which we have formulated on cycling. And next, to end it all, of course, data. When you build things, when you want to know what's happening, you have to monitor this. You have to collect those data, learn from it, and take new measures, try new things. That's the whole set of measures of things we did around cycling, and where we saw that the only model split over 20 years that really changed was the cycling one. We have more cyclists than ever in Flanders, although we are known as a cycling country all over the years, but mostly in the sports business. And I see Kees laughing because he knows at the Tour de France we won 19 of them. We have some good sports cyclists, but then the Netherlands do also. And then next to that, active mobility isn't all about cycling, of course. It's also about pedestrians. And there, you really need courage to take decisions. We saw in the 90s, Ghent was the first one in Belgium, where the local people decided on creating a pedestrian zone. They got a lot of opposition. So it took courage to take the decision. And what we see today is that in most cities in Belgium, there are pedestrian zones. Why? Because the data showed that there weren't less customers. No, there were more customers than before. And the livability was rising. And that's what active mobility is all about. This is not about transport, not only about mobility. It's about livability in our streets. It's about surroundings where we come outside and where it's nice to live, where we want to be. That's active mobility. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. That was quite an inspiring contribution. And I know Flanders is going to be the cycling country for the coming years. So no, it's a pleasure to cycle there as well. I know personally. Let's continue to Germany, if I may say so. For me, we worked with Germany a lot in the Global South, especially through the GIZ as well. Can you elaborate a little bit, first of all, how in Germany as well the model split has been rising quite a lot, briefly, but also in the Global South, how through GIZ you're working in Global South and you're actually doing great. So love to hear a bit more from you on that.
Thank you. Yes. The model split has been changing in Germany, and I must say it is changing far too slowly. But at least being a quite urbanized country, it has been a cities phenomenon. So people in cities cycle because it's faster, because it is cheaper, because we have been implementing infrastructure. So yes, if there is safe infrastructure, people cycle. And we wanted to take this momentum of livable cities also to our development cooperation, which is why through the Transformative Urban Mobility Initiative, we have been trying to actually address urban mobility from a systems perspective and a livable cities, but also a, let's say, human-centered approach. So we want to put urban development before mobility planning. Because people do walk. We heard this morning that regardless of conditions in the cities in the Global South, 75% of women walk. They do so out of necessity, and they should do so safely. And they should do so also because that's how actually you get to live in your city. You get to create a neighborhood if you can meet your neighbor on the street because it's safe, because it has economic opportunities. And we know that with a bicycle, the distance you can cover almost triples. With e-bikes, it is more than that. So if we want to have inclusive cities, we cannot only put in huge backbone transport systems. We cannot only work with the informal transport sector. we also need to help create an infrastructure that actually helps people displace themselves safely between the nodes of all of those systems. And if all goes well, if it goes perfectly well, most services would be accessible within 15 minutes to 20 minutes from any point of the city you live in, either walking or cycling or by public transport, because that's how, and that is our long-term aim, we can decarbonize urban mobility. It is by reducing the necessity to use a car or use a motorcycle, because the city is a safe place for everybody to walk, to cycle, or to hop on a bus or use the metro, whatever is there.
Thank you so much, Daphne. It's very informative as well. I see one practical note, more people entering the room. We do have some seats here up front, so feel free to walk around and take a seat so more people can join. And again, it's great to see so many of you in this room. We should have some more sessions on active mobility, right? Okay, thank you so much. Take a seat. I think if we continue with the first panelist, I go to my right here, and I want to start with you, Ms. Peltier. We already shared something on that you get quite some requests from worldwide, from Global South countries, and I can imagine that there's a lot of requests probably to your organization. How do you prioritize, or would you say, well, more requests should come, or what's your perspective on that?
So I said a few words about that, I think, in my introduction, but we only try to maximize the development benefits. So, and again, I mean, it's not difficult to understand why active mobility makes sense. No, it's good economics. It's good for air quality. It's good for health. It's good for ridership of public transportation. It's good for climate. It ticks a lot of boxes. No, one additional thing that it does is that it can even help to improve last mile logistics in cities. You know, you see more and more cities where you have bikes that are not only used to deliver to carry people, but also to carry goods. No, we did some research on that, showing that it also makes quite a lot of sense. No? So these programs are not very difficult to prioritize. Perhaps one difficulty that there is sometimes is the fact that they can be fairly small in comparison to other development programs. You know, big development partners, but also this is true for carbon markets and green finance instruments. They are looking for something big, no? And so if you come to them with a pilot of 10 kilometers of bike lanes, I mean, that's not going to hit the threshold, and the transaction cost is going to be too high, you know. So that's why I think we should not hesitate to go big on those programs. When these are associated with mass transit investment, like a BRT, like a metro, like an urban rail, that's fairly easy. You know, in comparison to Claudia mentioned it, I think, this morning. No, for 1 mile of 1 kilometer of metro, how many kilometers of bike lanes can you build? No? So we should always think about, when we engage on a large-scale urban transport program, is do not forget active mobility, because this can be more than the cherry of the cake. No, it can bring all these good results at a fairly limited cost. No, but we need to go big. We need to go to scale if we want to avoid this transaction cost that there is in processing large-scale development programs. That's what we try to do at the World Bank. We try to train our are transport professionals, so all of them know that they have active mobility in the toolbox. We try to promote the exchange of experience. We built a specific community of practice of all the transport professionals who are interested in this topic. And in addition to associating active mobility programs to mass transit investments, there are a lot of synergies also with urban development, because building bike lanes can be an opportunity to rethink completely a city. And we see mayors that are actually have bold vision in developing. Bogota is a good example of that, to go big on active mobility, really because they want to rethink their city to make it greener, more livable, and more accessible. So, and that I think is going to lead to the emergence of a new generation of active mobility programs that is a bit separate from the mass transit investments, where active mobility is at the heart, at the core of the development objective. Lima is a good example of that. Lima has really a bold vision where they thought what they could do in terms of traffic management to free public space for bike lanes, and now they have these huge programs about building 400 kilometers additional bike lanes. We see additional cities that are interested in embarking on this.
Thank you very much. Very interesting to hear, and I think we can listen to you much longer. Continuing to your neighbor Rogier, WRI, you already stressed the importance of active mobility, and I think your organization is already being so active on this topic. I'd like to thank you for that as well. That's really helping, and I think, of course, we can do so much more. And when we are talking on financing for active mobility, which is this whole conference about how to finance more sustainable mobility, what's your opinion on how to perhaps a new active mobility fund, or how are we going to achieve that? And I know it's quite a tough question, but maybe you can give your perspective on that for us.
I just said to Nicolas, because we are the World Bank and WRI partnering now for 21 years in transforming transportation, that the next 10 years can be about financing the right infrastructure, right? So let's not do that. But I think, one conference is not sufficient to cover the complexity, because we know, there's sufficient resources, but how do you make it flow? And I think in terms of, before I get to what the targeted active mobility fund could look like, I mentioned very particular examples of our work in cities and how tough it is to get it done, right? So, and I think two things need to happen. And one is to structurally build active mobility in the actual funding and financing of multilaterals. I dotted down some notes here that the outer ring road, I lived in Nairobi for almost 7 years, and I know some people here in the audience are living in Nairobi too, but the outer ring road, which is an investment of $120 million done by the African Development Bank, is the deadliest road in East Africa. So it recorded 44 deaths in 2021 and 58 in 2021. So you invest in a completely unsafe piece of infrastructure, right? So how do we build in active mobility and road safety structurally in the investments in road infrastructure? That is one. I mean, you can think about all sorts of nice funds that target active mobility, but without that, we're not making a dent. Then the second is that we see working in so many cities every year, and especially we developed an approach where we work together hand in hand for a longer time with 30 to 40 cities, which we call these deep dive cities. We see there is an appetite to demonstrate to the population what active mobility actually is, right? And for those targeted questions, it's very difficult to kind of, knock on the door of the World Bank. Can we help? It is very difficult because it's a different envelope. We're not talking about $120 million ring road, right? We're talking about a stretch of 10, 20, 30 kilometers of cycle lanes, for example. And we think, and this is what we're currently discussing with the partners with countries, that a targeted active mobility fund can help these cities to answer the requests of these cities to demonstrate the benefits of active mobility, and better doing than talking, right? So in this active mobility fund, we can imagine that this would be a fund that addresses cycling and the pedestrian walkways, and that it, that 20 to 30 cities maybe can, request for targeted investment in active mobility. We have done more of these things in other sectors. So, for example, in Sub-Saharan Africa, we've developed a water fund that is looking at resilience and water investments that are too small for multilaterals, but are highly impactful, right? So this is a kind of a missing middle in the financing that you need for water-sensitive projects, for bicycle and pedestrian projects in cities. But also another example, we developed this Terra Fund, which is actually a conduit to fund and finance land restoration in 27 countries in Africa. So we see a huge opportunity to work with the partners and financing institutions to see what would a targeted active mobility fund look like. And together with some kind of championing countries, I think this can be a real great solution and a championing mechanism for cities, and that answers to the demand and the needs of many cities.
Thank you very much. Interesting information. I hope if you have questions, again, we don't have much time, but if you can do it in one sentence, feel free. And note down on the post-its if you have ideas or feelings, again, feel free to do so. I'd like to shift to panel number 2. We do have 2 panelists, but I can complete and be a bit flexible in that sense. But before we do that, it's an active session, so please stand up. Feel free to really stand up, stretch a little bit, so have a little bit more energy. Thank you. Showing the good example, of course. Just to stress a little bit, we're sitting too much in this world, I think. You may stretch your arms, don't worry, you can do that.
Yes, also.
Okay, thank you so much. Feel free to sit down again or keep standing, of course.
Okay.
It is true, actually, right? There was research, we're sitting too much in this world, and I think our jobs are a perfect example of that. Although this conference helps you to keep walking a little bit from room to room. It helps to energize a little bit on the last 50 minutes we're gonna have today. I think, first of all, to stress indeed the financing, as my neighbor just also mentioned to me. I think it's so important that countries like the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, we also have an obligation to think a bit further on active mobility. Personally, I'm from the Netherlands and we grow up with cycling, but in so many global South countries, there's also quite a cycling culture. And I think we shouldn't underestimate the fact that there's already so much being done and knowledge shared, and that there's happening a lot. We cannot even oversee everything what is happening in the world. And Heather, if I may start with you, already mentioned that the research you did together with the World Bank. I think it's a perfect example on why you should invest in active mobility. And I think we all agree in this room that that's a good idea. But maybe for those who don't know the research, can you elaborate briefly on the results? Because I think it's quite an accomplishment you did there.
Sure, and Nicola already provided some of the takeaways, but maybe just to take a step back, it's been mentioned already that in the pandemic we saw so much more interest in active mobility, and so we wanted to take advantage of that at ITDP. We had many of the cities where we work. Again, I mentioned earlier Of course, we're in the business of supporting sustainable and equitable transportation, and we do work at all levels, including at the national and international level, but a lot of work in cities. And so we had many of the cities that we were working in, building these pop-up lanes, having much more interest in active mobility and coming to us asking for more support. And this was not new, but we just saw that it was increasing during the time of the pandemic. And so we decided to launch a campaign, which is our Cycling Cities campaign. We launched it during COP27 as transportation was on the agenda at the COP for the first time. And so much of the attention was on electric vehicles, which we were, of course, very excited about. But we thought that there was, a lot of attention should be going to active mobility as well. So we launched our Cycling Cities campaign with the goal of having 25 cities from the global south. We hear about examples from the Netherlands, from Germany, from Copenhagen, from Denmark, from Europe all the time, but we don't hear what the great cities are doing in the global south. So our goal was to have 25 cities join the campaign. We're now 34, 35 cities and growing, with the goal of getting 25 million more people located near protected bike lanes. So it's also been mentioned, it's no secret that if you want to get people on bicycles, you need protected bike lanes. It's been proven over and over again. Paint on the ground might work in some places, but in most places it doesn't work. You need actually designated lanes. So that was our goal. And so going forward, talking to all of these cities that had plans, had desires, one of the big issues, of course, which is why we're all here, is the lack of finance. And so, a lot of these places are dependent in one way or another from borrowing, often from multilateral development banks. So this brings us to the study, which is, we really wanted to look at examples where bilateral, multilateral development bank financing has led to successful investments in active mobility, walking and cycling. And just because we had the data available, we chose to look at cycling lanes. So Nicola already talked about the 5 case studies that we looked at. Again, Buenos Aires, Tianjin, Lima, Addis Ababa, and Dar es Salaam, which all have a combination of usually some level of national and city level financing along with development bank financing. I mean, one thing that we saw sadly is there isn't enough cases actually of multilateral and development bank financing. We need a lot more of it. And as Nicola said, when we do have those examples, it's clear that there is a return on investment, 53%, 35%, and that's just based on available data. It's hard to crunch these numbers, but we know that the return on the investment is huge, and it's everything from the health benefits, climate benefits, traffic alleviation, network effects, and public transport ridership. So maybe just a couple of takeaways. One of the big things is really looking for a point of entry for finance. Tianjin was one of the case studies. We're really excited to be able to celebrate the Sustainable Transport Award that was given to Tianjin for all of their investment in walking and cycling connected to getting people on public transportation. And that's really the systems approach that we want. We want more ridership on public transportation. It's good for people, it's good for cities, it's good for climate, and it's good for finance. If you're financing metro or rail and you don't have people riding it, it's not going to be a good investment. So you need to have access. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. The other is traffic alleviation. The Lima project has been talked about, really looking at how all of these investments work together to make it better for the cities, but also better for the finance. We have to work on these things together. So again, really excited to celebrate the example of Tianjin. It's clear that there's the pipeline of interest, and we need to take this more systemic approach. And yeah, we're glad that this study provided a number of case studies to make that point. And then the next step is as Nicola mentioned, is developing a return on investment tool so that each time there's a city interested in these investments, we're not starting from scratch to try and make that case, but we really have a user-friendly tool to do that. But we also need more commitment from the banks that this is something that they really want to do, and that it becomes, normal business, just like we see Metro, and we're finally seeing with Bus Rapid Transit, which at ITDP we've been working on for decades. But walking and cycling, we shouldn't be building projects without that. Again, good for people, good for business.
Thank you so much. Very interesting to hear. And again, if you haven't read the research, please do so. It's very informative. And indeed, I think also the way of how we should continue and proceed. So well done again. And thank you for being here. If I may go to your neighbor, unfortunately, from Addis Ababa, we wanted to dive in, but unfortunately, Mr. Asmara is not able to join the panel today. So I continue, if that's okay with you as well, with Ms. Marianne, mayor from Lalitpur. Sorry, I had to practice that, Lalitpur. And I'm very curious. We have heard quite some information already on this panel and from different sides of the world. I'm very interesting, and I think the audience is as well, to your perspective on all of this, on active mobility in that sense, but especially also on the financing side. We'd love to hear a bit more from you.
Thank you for the question. First of all, I just want to take you to a little bit further. Like the Kathmandu Valley had very good cycle culture up until, say, mid-80s. Thereafter, the two-wheeler motorbikes just overtook it because those motorbikes are easily accessible. Now, we did not have a local election for 18 years from 2017. During that time, the cycle culture has gone back to worse. And then the local election took place in May 2017. And then I won the Lalitpur Metropolitan City Mayor. Then I'm a cycle lover. I have a very old bicycle, which is almost 35 years old and still good. And I used to take it to have a round of my city. But the problem is there was nothing, as I heard a lot of good things on cycle culture done by other panelists. But we didn't have anything. The new constitution promulgated some 8 years before does not recognize bicycle. That is one of the biggest challenges. However, once I am elected as the Metro Mayor, I started constructing bicycle lanes. And this is my second tenure of 5 years. In accordance with the Nepalese constitution, a mayor can be elected twice. Now, mine is almost going to finish very soon. So having said this, there are a lot of things to be done regarding bicycle culture to be reestablished. So during my first tenure, we constructed 60 kilometers of bicycle lanes, squeezing the international standard because our roads are not that wide. Again, it's a very it goes like a serpent, so it's a very difficult. The roads are in the heritage city, so we must not compromise the heritage characteristics. So we have constructed almost 60 kilometers of bicycle lanes, but none of those is dedicated. However, we constructed bicycle stands in many places. So this is a start of bicycle culture in the country. But so far, we haven't received any support from either the federal government or provincial government or the international donor agencies like the World Bank, ADB, etc. However, we are doing our level-based endeavor to increase bicycle lanes, and we have the ring road. Out of that, of the ring road, there is 7.9 kilometer length is in my territory. So on the both side, we have already tender for the dedicated cycle lane. So that will be the first dedicated cycle lane in my city. So I'm quite optimistic that something has been done. Now, whatever we have done in my city, the other municipalities have copied, and they have done very nicely. Just take an example of Nanagari Nagarpalika that lies in the Tarai belt. So they did it very nicely, better than mine. So this is something that satisfies me. But we have to do quite a lot of things in this case. Thank you.
Thank you so much for these inspiring words. We do have to round up, unfortunately, with this session, but I have so many more questions for you. So please continue, and also, of course, tomorrow to have this discussion together and ask questions and share knowledge in that sense. Briefly summarizing the conclusions in that sense, I think we started with, as Kees mentioned, our minister, to do this together in the Global South, within Europe, in the US. I think we can do much more if we work together in that sense. We should maximize the impact, I think, from Ms. Peltier also mentioned, where's the most impact we can make and make decisions in that direction. It's important to take into account. So thank you for sharing that with us today. I think also what we've heard from Germany as well, we need infrastructure, safe, dedicated infrastructure, not just paint, as Heather also mentioned, with all the respect to the paint. It's a good start, but we need safe infrastructure dedicated for cycling and walking, because indeed, let's not forget walking. It's active mobility, it's cycling and it's walking in the same time, especially in the Global South. So please, we should take it into account. I also noted down that we shouldn't hesitate to go big on projects. I think that's also something to take into account. We are quite modest, I think, in the cycling and walking world. We should go maybe a bit bigger with our projects and with our ambitions and our ideas. So let's try and help each other in that direction as well. And I think to conclude, let's continue the conversation as well. I'd like to mention the ECF Fellow City Conference in Ghent in June this year, Belgium. We go by bike, by the way, but I can imagine, of course, that's not for everyone. But more than happy to have this World Cycling Conference and continue the conversation over there. So more than happy to invite. There's also scholarships and sponsorships via the Dutch Cycling Embassy available. And I saw other organizations are also providing sponsorships for that conference. So again, it's the Fellow City Conference in June this year in Belgium. And finally, last but not least, if you have the post-its, feel free, we're going to collect them as well, but also feel free to bring them up front, or your business card if you want to stay updated on active mobility in the Global South and on the financing of active mobility. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you especially for the panelists for sharing your ideas, and have a great day on this conference. Thank you.
Thank you.